Hello, everybody. We're about to get started here. I'll just give everybody a minute or two to settle in and give them a chance to all join. Okay, it's 1 past the hour. Well, let's just kick things off here. Hello, and thank you for joining the Safetica team as we discuss the role of DLP in healthcare, data protection, and compliance. I'm Steve Bottini, Territory Manager, and with me is John Paste, our lead engineer. He's going to be taking you through the demo today. Please feel free to make this demo as interactive as possible and ask as many questions as you'd like at the sidebar here, and we'll get to all of them for you. So we could go ahead and start moving through the presentation here. So today's agenda, we're going to focus on the what, the why, mostly on the how Safetica can protect you and your data. So let's move along. Look at some trends in healthcare data, breach statistics here. So hey, that's a big number. The bottom line is healthcare data is an extremely high value target for attackers. Healthcare companies may not be getting hit more than other companies, but they do seem to get in the news more. And it's our job to keep you out of the news, keep your organization out of the news. So we can move on. That's another big number. As you can see, guys, breaches are very costly. So let's move along. From breaches to ransomware and exfiltration, attackers leverage stolen credentials and social engineering, all with the goal to appear to be authorized employees so that they can deliver their payload. These attacks often show up as internal threats from trusted employees. So being able to make sure employees aren't accessing unauthorized data or sending information they should not becomes even more important. As an example, we don't want John, the engineer, accessing the finance department or patient files. And we'll show you today how Safetica can help prevent bad actors and even trusted employees from unauthorized behavior. Let's look at some regulatory compliance here. So no healthcare presentation would be complete without talking about HIPAA regulations. It can be vast and at times vague, but wouldn't it be nice to be able to deploy a product that gave you peace of mind to know that a good portion of those requirements around data security have been satisfied? HIPAA doesn't require DLP products, but DLP does help healthcare companies meet much of their HIPAA requirements. And many of those requirements can be met with Safetica DLP by default, right out of the box with the easiest deployment in the industry. High trust certifications are another thing that Safetica can help with, can help you achieve. We can help not only with HIPAA, but with PCI, GDPR, and other compliance standards. Go ahead and move to. So as John will show in the demo, Safetica DLP allows organizations to monitor and control data movement. It can scan documents before they're being transferred and block them in case they contain sensitive information, such as healthcare, health insurance numbers, social security numbers, addresses, etc. And IT administrators can detect, prevent users from sending emails that could contain PHI. Detect and prevent them from copying PHI on portable storage devices, get reports with detected incidents, as well as many other actions. So really, to summarize, Safetica can help you discover your sensitive data wherever it may reside on your network, categorize your data so you can build rules around that data, how it's accessed by whom, and as well as where that data flows, both inside and outside of your network. So with over 1 million protected devices globally and the endorsement of Gartner and Forrester, you can be sure you're working with a company you can trust. And just to wrap things up, really want to thank you for attending and hope you'll one day join the Safetica family. And next we have the demo by John.
Alrighty, thank you, Steve, and hello, everybody. I will get my camera on here. Hopefully everything's working as it should. And let's get to the demonstration. So I'll just go right here. And yeah, I believe we're ready. Let me just double check something else. Yep, fantastic. All right, so again, hi everybody, I'm John. I'm not gonna be looking at the camera. I have a different monitor, so just disregard me looking somewhere else. But regardless, so what we're looking at here is Safetica. This specific instance is Safetica Pro, hosted in the cloud. And when I do say Pro, what I mean by this is we currently have two variants of Safetica. We have either Safetica Essentials or Safetica Pro. Essentials is just kind of auditing the environment, looking at the environment as a whole, and just kind of getting an understanding of the file movements and things along those lines, although there are no restrictions or anything along those lines with the Essentials variant of the product. Once we do get over to Safetica Pro, this is then where we start to have the DLP functionality, restrictions of this, that, and the other come into play. And also, as I mentioned, this is the cloud version of Safetica. It is hosted in Azure on our side, so you don't need to stand up any infrastructure. Everything can be managed nice and neatly from the portal here. And again, no need for infrastructure, no need to maintain that infrastructure. And it's just makes everybody's lives a lot easier at the end of the day. Of course, if there is the absolute necessary to have something on premise, if you have some sort of a DMZ or just something where you need to lock down some data that is on-prem, we also do have a on-prem offering, although at the end of the day, say 99% of folks are looking to go with the cloud hosting, again, just because of the ease of use, really. Let's do one other thing real quick here. There we go. All right, so getting into the product itself. When we do get into Safetica initially, we are seeing that we're on this data pane. And this data pane is going to be going over kind of any and all file operations or manipulations that are happening on the endpoint. And also something that I should point out is Safetica is an agent-based solution. There is an agent and a client which reside on the machines that we're deploying to, and whether those machines are Windows machines, Mac machines, or also Windows servers, we can cover these machines and of course have the understanding of what's going on with the data in the environment. We see we've got users by incidents here, for example, so we can see Nikki has the most violations, but not necessarily the largest size of files, and we can see that Rebecca underneath her has less violations, but the file sizes that she's manipulating with are higher. Of course, we can also see these sort of things when we go down a little bit further here. Naturally, we have information on the audit operations, blocked operations, sharing via 365, and some other things here. And forgive kind of, let's say, not necessarily seeing so much around here. I just took a relatively long time frame to look at doing the past 12 months here. I could, for example, do past 90 days. And we would get some very similar info. We can see it looks a little bit different when we do go down in time. And this is demo data. Some of this is some actual data from this machine, for example, but the rest here is just some demonstration data. Anyways, going through here, though, we can see we have the information such as file, risk levels, data classification, size, user, action, so on and so forth. If we were to scroll over through here, source of the information, destination of the information, and again, so on and so forth. Some very high level information that we can pull from the product. But one thing I do want to touch on real quick is the risk side of things here. And this is, for example, to determine if that action that was done by said user, if it seems to be either low risk, medium risk, or high risk, even depending if you don't necessarily have any policies to block the actions or anything like this, this will help you get a better understanding as to what this individual is doing, why they're doing it, and if it's maybe something you should look into further if it's not already a restricted action or something along those lines. So for example, we're looking at when operations happen. Is it a part of the regular working time? Was the communication or whatever it might have been sent to a trusted environment, user, domain, what have you? Was the application being used a standard application to use? And was there any sort of data classification in relation to the information? So many different levels, of course, and well, naturally there is some AI involved in here as well to kind of go through all of these, to get the understanding for each user as to what is normal and what is not normal. And of course, then we can output that in this smart analysis, which will be giving us risk levels again. In normal production environment, we would see something like low, medium, and high. Again, given the demo data, we unfortunately don't see that now. But regardless, that's just a quick overview on the data side of things and the information that we pick up on. Also, one quick thing I want to mention before going forward, as Steve did mention earlier, we would like to make this as interactive as possible. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to submit those into the chat or whatever it might be called in GoToWebinar. I always can't recall the exact name. There's polls and questions and something like this. But regardless, if you could submit any questions that you might have for us to review, and then we can hopefully answer those questions today or at a later point in time. Going to the application side of things. Now, Safetica doesn't necessarily just monitor the data flow or what's happening on the data side of things. We're also looking at the application usage on those machines as well as the website usage. And I know that kind of how I've been presenting this so far is not necessarily specific for healthcare. I will get to that in a second. I'm just trying to give a general overview, let's say, of Safetica and what it can do for your organization. But with the application side of things, this just gives us an insight as to who's using what apps and when they might be using them. We can see there's some uncategorized applications up here. And if we want to get a full overview of the applications being used, we can have a look here. And for example, right now it's being sorted by the total active time. So Firefox, VLC, maybe that's not something we would want to see at the top of that, AutoCAD and so on and so forth. Seems relatively okay, but of course, World of Tanks, that's definitely something that we don't want to see. So could be something to look into a bit further. We can also, of course, look at per user, per category of applications, and any restricted activities potentially that somebody's been trying to do. Looks like we have something set to restrict Notepad in this environment for one reason or another, and we can see, yeah, it's been restricted. Now, going to the website section, very similar to what we just saw in applications. Overall, kind of, just view as to who's doing what in terms of web visits. And we can see the websites per user, per category, and any block activity. And we see the total active time, yeah, so on and so forth, category, website, users. Yeah, all very standard and simple in comparison to the application side of things here. And if you do want to drill down further into these active times, we can do that in the behavioral section as well. I'll get there in a sec. And going towards external devices, naturally, if there were devices being plugged into these machines, which again, it's all demo environment, demo data, but regardless, we would see the list of devices that have been plugged into the machine and can look into that further if needed. Going to the app usage, this is where we do get very granular in terms of looking at who's doing what on the machines, and we can see we're getting down to the few seconds here when it comes to these sort of things. Same would go for web visits or web page. And this is all just active time in the instance of, let's just say I would switch from, one tab to another. That's would show essentially as different website visit. If I were to go from Firefox to Edge and just kind of switch back and forth every 5 seconds or so, it's whatever I'm looking at actively on my machine and I'm, have my mouse over and using. So that's essentially how the apps and websites work. And if you don't want to see this information, we can also turn that off. I know that some organizations don't necessarily want to have all the insights into the app and website usage for the company. Perfectly fine, it can be disabled, or you could also have it enabled for certain teams, certain users, just depending, of course, on how you want to go about these things. Also, One thing to mention is regarding email traffic. So naturally, we are looking at the email traffic in and out off that machine via Exchange. And we can see, again, all the information that we would need on the high level, at least, regarding the emails that are being sent around in the company. Now, one real quick thing before I do get into the protection side, I do just want to also, after speaking about email, talk about our Microsoft 365 tenant that we can deploy into the environments as well. So we can naturally sync with AAD or AD as well to get the user tree, the user information into the product and have it nice and neat. In that sense, also with the teams and all that good stuff. Naturally, we can also sync with Exchange for understanding what emails are going around via 365, and then also, last but not least, we can then protect the information that is in SharePoint and OneDrive and Teams, as well as it leaving those places as well. And it's just a simple tenant that one goes in. You can sync, let's say, all users, continue, and then you just need to go through and essentially grant some access with your privileges, and then you have that tenant up and running and protecting your 365 cloud environment. Yeah, alrighty. So I will move over to classifications, because I can imagine that's why the majority of you are here, is to also understand how this does work in the, let's say, healthcare space. And we can see we do have some predefined template here for healthcare. And for example, I'll just go about creating just something new just because, but let's do, PHI, for example. And I could give it a description if I want. I don't need to, but I could. Anyways, so we can go and start building out our data classifications. And for those of you who are not necessarily the most familiar with data classifications or with DLP and kind of how that all works in general, if we are looking to restrict some sort of data from leaving the environment, we need to know what that data is and what's inside the files, the images, whatever it might be. And the way that we go about that is we're either using our predefined algorithms, which are going to be catching things, generally speaking, it's going to be PII and PHI, things along the lines of, socials or the Medicaid or Medicare numbers and things along these lines. We're going to have all of that in the predefined algorithms. If you have something that's maybe a bit more unusual or it's just not covered in the predefined algorithms, then we can use a keyword search to go through and search for said keyword, depending on whatever that might be. If you maybe want to restrict some blood reports that you have from individuals that are on a PDF or something like this, maybe the easiest way is to look for the keyword blood. Probably wouldn't be, but still, you catch my drift. That's essentially how the keywords work. For regex, and again, for those of you who are not familiar with regular expressions, that's just matching any sort of number pattern, or really a pattern of a string with letters and numbers or characters or what have you. So this would essentially be looking for maybe something like I don't know, I think of invoice number off the top of my head, but for healthcare, it could be patient numbers or something like this, depending again on how that's categorized in your organization. You could be using a regular expression to look for documents that contain patient numbers or something along those lines. Again, easier one would be socials, but still trying to figure out the medical reference there. Going to application categories, this would then be essentially any documents or any information that is coming out of a certain application. Label the information as whatever you're looking to label it as. Similarly, for the file path, this is mostly meant for file servers or some sort of network storage or something along those lines, where you would be storing, say bulk, mass or bulk, there we go, data on those file servers or what have you. And that would be easiest using the file path. Say if it's located in this specific area on this server, this network drive, what have you, then let's classify that information as whatever we're looking to classify it as. This also works for OneDrive as well. If you have your, everything stored in your OneDrive and you want to ensure that this path within OneDrive is covered, you can use the file path in that instance. Websites would be anybody downloading some certain information from a specific web domain. If we have it coming from, I know, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, Epic. I know Epic is a very large player in the healthcare space, and I know they have a lot of systems that are integrated with a whole lot of things for the healthcare space. Could be some specific domain within Epic. If you're downloading information out of that service, then anything that comes from that will be labeled as such. I generally use like a CRM solution as an example, like HubSpot or Salesforce or something like this, but I think Epic would apply in this instance as well. Also, file types. This would I would imagine particularly work well for certain scans maybe being done within the industry, or something along those lines. I don't know if some sort of CAT scans or something along these lines, or even X-rays. I'm not really sure how they're exported or what sort of file type they might be in off the top of my head. But regardless, you could use that to identify any specific extensions of specific files to then categorize them as whatever you're looking to categorize them at. And last but not least, we're looking at third-party classification, or rather third-party metadata classification. And this actually works extremely well in our favor, as we do use metadata classification for whenever we're putting any sort of tags on the files, but we can also leverage others' metadata classification as well, such as Microsoft. A great example, especially since they do tend to provide some I guess free licenses for some of their services. But again, it's not necessarily full-blown protection. It could work for some instances, but it's also not exactly the most customizable, not the most user-friendly, and it's very easy to import any classifications that have been done from Microsoft or any other solution for that matter into Safetica, essentially just by using these identifiers that we see here. You can just grab that and then be able to populate them here, so you don't have to redo all your classification again, because that is a huge pain to go through something like that, and we try to make that as easy as possible for folks. So again, just to recap, so we can classify your data in your environment either by using our predefined algorithms, which again would be going over the standard PII, PHI, HIPAA, GDPR, and so on and so forth sort of information. If you do need to get more specific, then we go towards the keywords and regular expressions. And additionally, application category, file path, website, file type, and any existing classification. And last but not least, when it comes to how we go about this classification, we can bundle these together to make a more specific rule and use a and statement or an or statement, just depending on the preference. So for example, we could use, if something contains this keyword and this regular expression, and if it was coming from some specific website, and if it is a specific extension, then classify the file as sensitive or what have you. Again, you can make it as open-ended or as specific as you wish. So quick example regarding the classifications. I hope that all made sense. And again, if anybody has any questions on anything, please feel free to drop that into the chat so we can address that later. And once we've got our classifications set, that's when we move over to policies. And actually, before I go and talk about this a little bit, I do want to just get something set on my other side here. I'm actually using, this is my on-premise instance, but I just want to double check if I did something correctly regarding my settings here. So notify, yep, okay. I just want to make sure that we've got the blocking rules set. Yep, that looks like it's good, fantastic. All right, so I'll go back here just for the time being. But when we're talking about the policies that Safetica has and how we go about enacting these policies, so we've got our standard data policies, which naturally is covering data leaving the environment. And that could be, for example, getting sent out many different ways. So we can look at the destination types at least real quick. So this would naturally cover any data trying to leave the environment via Cloud Drive uploads, which would be something along the lines of using your File Explorer and dragging that into Dropbox or Box, Google Drive, what have you, OneDrive Business, OneDrive Personal, SharePoint. So that would be that use case. Of course, we can restrict them also getting uploaded via the web and things along those lines. Also, naturally, email communication. If somebody's attaching some things to some emails and sending them somewhere they should not, we're going to pick up on that and be able to restrict it, or at least log the information, as I showed earlier. External storage devices, USBs, or whatever other things you might be plugging into your computer to offload data. We can cover that as well. Git is a bit of a specific instance to go further, but I don't necessarily know that's so applicable for the healthcare industry, unless, of course, it's some sort of health tech. But going towards, of course, instant messaging, 365 file sharing, and well, you get the idea. The rest here, network shares, printing, RDP, virtual print, and web uploads. Of course, easiest is just to do all, and then you kind of call it a day. Now, we can also do some things in regards to some safe destinations or safe zones. This would generally speaking be your internal company environment, your approved, or rather your company email domain, maybe your intraweb or wherever you might be working and sending information frequently. And of course, this could maybe differ from team to team or something along those lines. And that's also why we can also apply to either the entire company, specific teams, specific users, or specific machines. And this is applicable for not just the data policy, but any other policies that we do have here, and as well as filtering, of course, through some of the information for the apps and websites and so on and so forth to just get more granular, to get an understanding of who's doing what and how to kind of restrict or position that. Last but not least, we also can then restrict the copying to clipboard as well as blocking screen captures, naturally of sensitive information as well. In terms of the actions that can be taken, we either just have a pure allow or log, notify, block, and block with override. Now, block with override is actually, I can turn that on. It'll be easier to explain visually than trying to just talk about it. So actually, I'll go into this policy and I can switch this to block with override. Looks like everything's enabled correctly. Yep, easy peasy. All right, so I'll save that and just should take 1 second to apply. And while it does do that, one thing I did not or wasn't really able to share in the SaaS environment, but in this on-prem environment, I've enabled data discovery for this environment. And now with data discovery, this is essentially the agent crawling, combing through, scanning, whatever you want to call it, the endpoint and looking for sensitive information on that machine. It will also work if you are connected to your OneDrive or something like that via your Explorer. We will still be able to then crawl whatever that might be, or any network attached storage as well, what have you. So we're able to, again, use that agent on the machine and just go through looking where the sensitive information resides. That's one of the biggest problems that we find with almost any organizations for that matter. It's not necessarily industry specific, but it's just people don't know where their data is. You know, there's so many different repositories for the data, whether it's OneDrive or again SharePoint or a file server or whatever else. Your CRM system doesn't really matter, but people, of course, they download stuff all the time onto their machines just because they need access to that data for one reason or another, and then they just forget to delete it. It just kind of sits there, and well, unfortunately, yeah, a lot of it does get lost, and somebody might have some very sensitive information just sitting on their machine that's been there for years, and nobody knows that it's there. And what happens if, maybe that machine gets lost or something happens, and you don't know what you actually have on that machine or what could potentially happen to that information. And at the end of the day, if there's maybe you have a rule where if there's any data older than 30 days that contains, whatever it contains, you need to remove it from your device. That would be a great idea, but of course you don't know that you have sensitive information there unless you're running some sort of discovery scans of whatever classifications you're looking for on said machine. Just again, it's a very, very important thing, I believe, at least very crucial for almost all organizations to understand where their data resides, who has access to it, and naturally, what are we going to do about it? Are we just going to let it sit on that machine, or are we going to come up with some remediation to, make sure that, we keep our machines nice and clean and that we're not storing a whole bunch of sensitive and personal, what have you, information on said machines. So again, just wanted to touch on data discovery real quick, and naturally we can filter things out via the machine in question, certain file paths maybe, or classifications, or what have you. But going to how this works in practice. So I'm just going to go to retransfer. It's a nice trusted source for just sending information. So let's let that load. Forgive the virtual machine for, well, doing its thing. That's just how it goes sometimes. All right. So let's get a link. That will be easier. And let's upload some files. So yeah, the way that I set this classification was very basic and simple, just for the purposes of showing how the notifications look. I just did the file path, and anything under notify, well, it's going to be blocked with override, which isn't exactly logical, but you'll get the idea regardless. So everything looks to be pretty fine here, looks normal enough. I will get a link and it thinks about it. We see file upload was blocked and there's an override option if I want to. And we can see here, we got the application that it was happening, we got the file in question, we have the website, and then we've got the category. You know, blah, 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 blah. Information is sensitive, you're not supposed to do this. But if you do want to override, you can go, I need an exception, file is not sensitive, I should be able to do this. And you do need to type something here to then let you override the action, which we can see here. But if you realize, whoops, I definitely did not want to do this, you can just close that down and we'll see that nothing happened. Something went wrong and the file never made it out. Basically, the notification that we would have for somebody actually trying to offload information where it would just get purely blocked would look very similar. It's just when you open the pop-up, rather than it giving you some options to do something about it, it just says, yeah, sorry, you can't do this. So that is a quick example of how that works in practice. Just wanted to show you that real quick. Other than that, actually also one thing I didn't really touch on, you can group multiple classifications into the policies to, again, make your lives a bit easier. But going back to the overarching view of the policies, we have data, first and foremost. Then, of course, applications. We can also restrict or enable access to certain applications. For example, if you only want people to use Adobe Acrobat as a PDF reader, you could theoretically then go through and set up a policy to block all PDF readers and have an action that would be before said action for allow Adobe Acrobat. In that case, it'll go and it'll, if somebody's trying to open something else that is other than Adobe, it will not work. If they do open Adobe Acrobat, it is allowed. Going towards websites, very similar. We can see, I was doing some example the other day here. So we've got a example for websites. So block all websites, probably not the greatest idea, but could do. If you have Google, allow Google before that, we would be able to go to Google, anything, google.com is perfectly fine. But if we do try to go to Instagram or something like that, not going to work. But also because it's blocked down here. But again, you get the idea. And going over actually to the application one real quick again. Some folks have asked, can we just block all applications? Yes. Theoretically, it's not a good idea. It's most likely going to interrupt some startup processes on the machines, and that makes it a little difficult to, well, do what you want to do. So I would recommend against that. Then we have external devices, naturally, to monitor what's going on there. So we have our action for block, only allowing for safe destinations. But for example, we can restrict the transfer via, just Bluetooth devices being connected, Bluetooth file transfers, USB, Windows portable device, and we can see got a few other things here, card readers, CD, DVD, FireWire, and so on and so forth. So we can either just, outright restrict the usage of these things, or again, we can have only in safe destinations. If we have a company approved USB stick or something we want to use, we can have that in the safe destinations here. Again, could be some Bluetooth, maybe something you use to transfer. It could be your company phone or something like this. If you're supposed to be doing that, then you can have that again set in the destinations. And again, down here, applying to either the entire company. I'll just open this up to give you an idea. I'll demo data again, but the whole company, specific teams or something like this, or going down to the user level or the machine level. So yeah, it's a quick overview then again of the policies. And last but not least actually is auditing. And as I was mentioning, if you don't want to see the app and website usage, we can go in here and we can see that actually I have disabled the application usage here, and I'll just put that back on because it should be on. But if you want to disable any of these, you can either just disable them by doing that here, or you can just remove them from here. And again, we can apply this to specific users or specific machines or teams or what have you, depending. Other than that, it's mostly just kind of some housekeeping and management things, overview of the users and the teams and how that's all structured, the devices in the environment, are they healthy, do they communicate, do they need an update or what have you, alerting in the solution. Do we want to be notified on everything, or maybe just the block operations or just override operations? Also for risky operations, do we want to be notified on all levels of risk? Probably not, most likely just high. Could be medium as well, depending. But again, going through the alerting, scheduled reports, we have many different options of the kind of reports to create, either a standard data security report, data flow, device report, or a security audit. And then we can have that set on a certain frequency if we wish as well. You know, we do daily, weekly, monthly, sending the report language, and then also the users who should be included in said report and where to send it to. And actually, one thing for some reason that just came into my mind, which also I wanted to mention and show, we do have OCR as well in the solution, optical character recognition, to ensure that we are scanning images, or any other thing that would require OCR, just to make it nice and broad. But we do have OCR in the product, and we can select, for example, if you needed to choose English and Russian or something like this, two different alphabets, you would need to choose then two different languages, which we can do, which is fantastic. And then also content analysis file types, we can either do all, custom, recommended. Again, recommended is naturally recommended, but again, you get the idea, I hope, at least. So yeah, that's regarding OCR. Just wanted to bring that up real quick because I can imagine that would also be quite of importance as well. And last but not least is just some settings, nothing too crazy here. Accounts and permissions if you want to provide somebody with access into the environment and so on and so forth. But again, I believe that's at least it for my high-level demo spiel here. Steve, I will pass the ball back to you. Oh, Steve, we got you.
Yeah. Hey, guys. Yeah, so that wraps things up. We're really happy that you've joined and look forward to working with you. If you have any further questions, you can reach us at the contact information that we've provided. And yeah, look forward to taking the next steps with you and Safetica.
All righty, let's just have a quick look. I don't know if there are any questions today. That's all right. But yeah, folks, if anybody does have any questions, please feel free just to reach out to us. Yeah, our contact information should be available, or regardless, you can always go on our website and book a session with us. Yep. All right, yeah, thanks, folks, and have a good one.
Okay, see you guys.